My next guest is going to be making his UFC debut this Saturday on short notice against Trevor Peek at lightweight at UFC on ABC 5. It is Chepe Mariscal joining me here on the program. Chepe, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. How about you?
I'm doing awesome, but I'm not going to be fighting in the UFC this Saturday. Tell me where you were when you found out the news and how, what was sort of your initial reaction?
Uh, well, I was training already. I was already in the gym. I was already having a workout, uh, being done, and then Sunday, I got this call. I remember my manager saying being ready for a call, and especially getting my weight down and being ready for any opportunity. So I definitely got ready, and then I got the call, and then suddenly. Uh, it was too hard to believe at first. It was like, oh wow, like for real, is this real? It didn't hit me yet. A lot of people were like, I had a team there that I told, and they're like, oh yeah, like congrats and stuff like that. And I was just like, man, it hasn't hit me yet. But when I got here to the hotel and then doing all the media and stuff, I was like, oh, this is actually the real deal.
And it's a long time coming, man. I mean, people who aren't familiar with your story and everything you've done, I mean, you've been on the regional scene for a long time. You fought some of the really tough opponents on the regional scene as well. I was just telling you off air, we did an interview and I went back and looked at the date here, October 22nd, 2016. Like, I know it's been a grind to get here. Was there a point you thought this might not happen, or did you always feel like you were going to end up in the UFC?
Like, of course, like when you start losing, those doubts start kicking in, and then like I had other family members who were like, man, you should start doing something else, maybe,
Oh, no.
like
Okay.
maybe this is not for you, like,
Right.
hey, you could do real estate or something, and a lot of people were trying to drift me away from the MMA scene. But my mother at the time, when she was live, she was telling me like, hey, stay in it, like work hard. Like, I know this is like doesn't sound good, but you'll see, like you just can't get rid of all these years of training to like not do it. So then I just stayed with it. I honestly, the more I stayed with it, more teammates and other fighters, other UFC fighters were telling me, "Hey, man, like if you stay in it, I think you could really like pop into the UFC scene, and yeah, I just stayed in it, and yeah, it just ended up happening."
Because I don't know if people know this or remember this, but and it could be wrong here. I remember years ago when we did our interview, you were actually training with TJ Dillashaw. Like, he had you as one of his training partners to help him get ready back when he was training in Colorado. So I know you had a lot of good influences early on, but you kind of think back to, some of those earlier days when you saw, you were training with UFC guys and they were in the promotion, yet you were getting to train with them.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. Especially being a part of a lot of like UFC fighters camps, other dudes camps. Like I was like, man, I'm right there. I have to be right there. I'm working really hard. I know I'm keeping up with these guys. They're obviously flying me out, doing a lot of invitational like gym sessions. And they would be all over the place. They were in California, they were in Colorado, so it was awesome to be around there. And they were definitely telling me like, hey man, like whatever I can do to help you get in UFC, like let me know. And it was just that I needed the proper fights. I needed the experience. I needed all these things that I didn't experience when I was an amateur or when I was younger. I was more into like I was in a lot of more of the winning scene, and then I started losing in the pros. But I knew I was going against the best of the best. Like
Yeah.
I made sure I fought nothing but the best of the best. And when I couldn't, and there was a guy who said yes, I was like, all right, let's go.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And then the other thing too, as well, you sort of referenced it there, your management. I know this is fairly new with you linking up with Iridium Sports. How did that all come together?
Just seeing his work, man. Obviously their work was great. They obviously they're great at what they do. So I just felt like everybody kept talking about them. I kept blowing them up, and then people kept like my families and friends that started getting into it more. They were like, "Hey, man, like, are you getting with the right people? Or like this was about a kick-ass knockout? Like." What can we do? Because it started like after winning, people start coming up around. They're like, hey, dude, like you're doing it, like I know you belong in the UFC. You're beating top dudes. You got guys that you beat that are in the UFC. They're like, we're like, I knew, sometimes you got to make the decisions by yourself, but I was making decisions by myself so long, so long. Even though when I was on the USA team back in the day, like there was decisions, even weight classes that I joined by myself. I didn't have anybody really there to help me. So like my coaches, my team at Elevation Fight Team, I talked to a bunch of UFC fighters. So they eventually like guided me the right way, and then they said like, a lot of other UFC obviously have different managers, but I
Mhm.
was just like, man, I know this one dude. It sounds like he's the man, and yeah, I just went for it.
Yeah, I know there's a couple of your teammates that are rep by them. I know Austin Hubbard being one of them as well. So yeah, I'm sure
Yeah, yeah.
good word of mouth there. So Trevor Peek, you find out you're fighting him. Did you know anything about him before taking this fight?
I've seen him fight his actually, his debut. So I
Hmm.
watched him fight, and I was like, oh, that was pretty cool because he had a finish and everything. Um, yeah, and then now getting the opportunity to fight him was pretty like, oh well, he's fun. He's got 8-0, he's got 8 knockouts. And I have always tested myself against guys like that, so I was like, man, might as well.
No, no, absolutely. And obviously moving up a weight class for this one. Is there much weight to cut ahead of this fight? Because you normally fight at 145.
Yeah, no, I actually no, it was. I woke up this morning and I was like 5 pounds away, so I was like, oh, okay, this is a lot easier than 45. But I was already getting ready for like any cuts that if I had to do at 45. So I was like, man, whatever I got to do to be ready for the opportunity. And then they gave me that 10 days notice, and then they said it's at lightweight. I was like, all right, let's go. And I
Yeah.
fought at lightweight before already,
That's
so I
right.
was
Yeah.
like,
No, I remember that.
I've been here. And it obviously it feels different when you're younger. You're like, oh man, this is just a little heavy. But right now, I've grown into my body a little more. I'm eating a lot better. I have a better team on the nutritionist side. So I was like, all right, let's go and really try this out.
Training camp. I'm sure, like you said, you sort of expected something to come up. Some, you're always in the gym training. Who have you had a chance to work with? Who helped you sort of get ready for this fight on short notice?
Well, my jiu-jitsu coach, Valor Caballero. Then I have Mike Gonzalez, who's my striking coach, and then a bunch of my teammates. So I've been helping Justin Gaethje with his camps
Oh, cool.
this time now. So he's coming around. We do a couple rounds. There's Archie Collin, who just fought in Bellator.
Big win over Emmanuel Sanchez. Doesn't hurt having him as a training partner, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. So I helped him out with his. So I was helping. Obviously, when I'm training, I like to help out other guys through camps. I know Tatsuro's on the same card as I am. When he came out to the U.S., we were just training all the time, trying to experience guys from obviously not from the States and stuff like that to see new styles, to try new different things. So I was still expanding mentally and then working hard, obviously, with the Gaethje rounds, and it just got a lot better.
who's out there with you as far as your corner? Who made the trip with you?
My striking coach, Mike, and my jiu-jitsu coach, Valor, and then I also have in my corners my girlfriend, Claire Guthrie.
Yes, from Ultimate Fighter and Invicta, of course. So I was going to mention that. It must be nice having someone that you're with who's also a fighter. I'm sure you can understand everything you're going through, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it makes it easier, especially with the weight cuts and then the understanding of fighting and stuff like that. And she's already been in this kind of like little scene. She's an Ultimate Fighter. She's been around the camera. She's been like really helping me out with a lot of things like that.
yeah, absolutely. How did you, if you don't mind me asking, how did you two meet? I was always curious about that.
It was at the gym training.
Yeah.
We were both training at Elevation Fight Team. Just she liked my style, I liked her style. We could like to go out there and make fun, and we just ended up hitting it off.
There you go. That's awesome, man. That's great. We hear about UFC jitters, but I'm just going to run through some of the names that you fought already, just because I think people need to realize, like, when I say battle tested, I mean it. You fought Gregor Gillespie, Bryce Mitchell. You have a win over Pat Sabatini. You also have a win over Yusuf Zalal, used to be in the UFC. That was a big win at the time because Yusuf was undefeated. You fought Steve Garcia, Sean Soriano, UFC vet. Like, I don't think there's going to be any jitters here just because you've been in there with some of the tough guys. How much did that prepare you for a moment like this?
Oh, man, it's really hard to explain because I don't think there's any fighter who's done what I've done, who fought
Yeah.
dudes that are already made in the UFC, 'cause they kind of just made in the UFC already,
Yeah.
and it's just I feel like the stars aligned for me because like I said, I needed all that experience, the winning, the losing, the comeback story, like I said, a lot of people thought my time was kind of done, and then when I was like 27, people were like, "Oh, you're too old, bro." Like, they want the 21-year-olds, they want the
Yeah.
22-year-olds, and I just felt like, man, at the time when I get in, I'm gonna be prepared for everything. I'm gonna be prepared for the guys that I'm fighting, and the cameras, the everything. It's just gonna feel like, man, this is where I belong.
How's this fight playing out on Saturday? I see you're a bit of an underdog. How do you see this one going down?
Man, hopefully, man, I want to get a knockout. I love finishing people. I have a little, like, I have 9 finishes right now, and I'm trying to go for like 10 or more. I have like goals of just racking up my finish rates. I like putting on a show. Obviously, I know I'm fighting another tough opponent, but I feel like, man, I got what it takes to go out and put this guy out.
How much do you think experience will play into this? I just rattled off those names you fought on the regional scene. Trevor just, I know he's had a couple of UFC fights, but he really hasn't fought the opposition that you have in your career.
Mhm. I think it's obviously a big factor, like, I've those dudes I fought and obviously I beat and lost to, that they just, they all had something good to say after. Well,
Mhm.
like, words too, like there's two probably I didn't talk to after because I was so mad that I lost, and I was like, man, forget this place. But yeah, it's just the experience, and then the messages I would get from other UFC fighters like on my team and other guys that I met in the regional scene that made it to UFC ended up giving me a lot of wise words, and you know like what to expect and not let that kind of stuff bury me. Like
Mhm.
to use it as an experience, and just move on, and hopefully you get what you want in the end.
What are you doing for downtime? I know everything's kind of happening at once, like, during fight week. How are you keeping yourself sane without getting too caught up in the moment that you're going to be making your debut on Saturday, man?
Man, right now, I was walking around Jacksonville, looking around, and then I'm a big Pokemon Go kid, so
Oh,
I
cool.
like, yeah, so I like playing that. So my son is into Pokemon, so I'm like, hey man,
Awesome.
like, so when I meet him, I give him my game. I'm like, hey man, I got everything unlocked. You don't have to work for it, I got it
There
for
you
you,
go. That's good
So
parenting right there. Yeah, I like
yeah,
it.
yeah. And I always thought it was cool. Why not to have all the like all the characters, all the Pokemon, at the first try, So I'm a big Pokemon collector, card collector. So I do that. I watch Dragon Ball Z,
I was going to
just,
say the t-shirt. Can I see
yeah,
your t-shirt? It looks
yeah,
really cool
yeah.
that you're wearing right now. That looks awesome. Look at that. I love that artwork, by the way. Like, that kind of that Japanese, kind of, the anime style looks really cool, especially on shirts
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff. Right.
great.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. And it's obviously like, there's fighting in it. There's guys who lose and then win, or, the guys that are in there like undefeated, end up losing to ignorance, to the guys that are working hard. So it was like it's fun.
And just before we get out of here, have you ever played the Pokemon game on Game Boy? I'm a little bit older than you, but back in the day, that was the game to play, the old school RPG Pokemon game. Have you ever played that?
Yeah, man. I was a big yellow version, red
Okay, I was
version
red.
back
I
in
like I
the
like playing red. That was my game, but
day.
amazing game, huh? It's awesome, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, man. It was so addicting that my parents had to take it in the middle of the night. Cause come on, like the Game Boy even made a little lamp for it,
Yeah.
for the game. And I was
Yeah,
like,
I
man,
remember that.
every
Yeah.
night, yeah,
Kids
they
don't
would
know
just,
how good they have it. The Nintendo Switch, it's got a full screen that you can see on. Back in the day, we had to use that little light for the Game Boy, right? So
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's just, it's cool to see that though, the
yeah.
transformation of things, and now it's like, I would be on the Switch, but I got it for my son. I was like, all right, here you go, and I'm just gonna stick to the Pokemon Go. It's more on the phone, and I'm doing a lot more traveling, more training, so I was just sticking to that.
How old's your son?
He's 9 years old.
Oh, cool. Okay, so good age too with the gaming and all that stuff, which is great, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Chepe, thanks so much for doing this, man. I know you got a million things to do. It's fight week. Really appreciate you taking some time. If there's anyone you want to thank before we get out of here, any sponsors, any social media you want to plug, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I'd like to thank all my supporters, my fans. Team Chepe as always. I like to thank my cornermen, my team back home, Elevation Fight Team, and obviously thanks to Iridium for the opportunities and the UFC.
And you got to thank your girlfriend too, otherwise she might see this and not be, too
Right.
happy.
Oh, she
Yeah.
was part of the team. Nah, just kidding.
Oh, there you go.
But
There you go. There
yeah,
you go. It's
like
all good.
so.
Just saving you for a little bit. There you
Yeah.
go.
Nah, yeah, but yeah, obviously it's hard to thank her, like more and more. She's like, hey, you don't have to say it all the time now. Like I'm like,
There
hey,
you go.
man, because I appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is not an easy road to take, especially two fighters. I've never met like any couples that have two fighters. It's always
Mhm.
like a coach and a fighter, or a normie
There's
and a
there's a few
fighter.
rare ones. I know Jakar Close and Courtney Casey's one, but you're right. It's not, you don't see it as often, right?
Yeah,
So,
but like I don't know them personally,
oh,
like
I see
so
what you
like
mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
yeah. So I don't get to experience that at all. So now I'm experiencing it myself. Even the team is like, wow, I don't know how you guys do it, man. We just we work very well together.